everyone, Karen Roby and Daphne Leprince-Ringuet here for ZDNet. And this is a really cool story that you put together here, Daphne, about asynchronous work. And I know it was spurred by a story about a CEO stranded in Australia. So just tell us what the meaning of this even is and what the story behind his story is.
So yeah, exactly. The story was spurred by a chat that I had with a CEO who got stranded in Australia while having to manage a team for his startup that's located in San Francisco and has workers across the US. So essentially, he's 17 hours ahead of his team, and it sort of got me thinking about the fact that we have been focusing a lot on remote working as of late because of COVID-19, but what happens if you also infuse some flexibility in timetables as well? So that's exactly what the CEO had to do. Obviously, he quickly figured out that it would be impossible to just be on the same timetables as the rest of his team all the time, and he started implementing what is known as asynchronous working. The concept behind asynchronous working is that you don't have to be in sync all of the time. So you give your colleagues, your employees, the control over when they want to be online, when they want to be responsive. So in other words, you shouldn't expect to get an immediate response to your email or your Slack message. Everything is done out of immediate sync. So he started implementing things like Loom, which is a collaboration app by which you can just record a quick video of yourself in the browser and send it over to the rest of your team to open up for whenever they want. They had connected meeting notes so that if half of the team wasn't attending a meeting, they could still get the meeting insights afterwards. He implemented a whole new protocol around decision making so that if you made a decision that would impact the team in a significant way, you'd have to fill in a type form that you'd share to a Slack channel so that if anyone had any sort of questions about this decision that had been made, they could go back to the decision, see what the goals were, what the outcomes were, expected outcomes were. And in that way, still have a degree of synchronization, but just not real time synchronization. He actually increasingly came to embrace this method of asynchronous collaboration. From what he told me, he has no plans to go back. He thought it gave more flexibility to his team. It made people a lot more in control of their timetable. So long as the outcomes are fulfilled in a way, in his perspective, this is only going to benefit the team and lead to more productivity.
So I think what's interesting is that this would really be, I think, a very foreign concept or idea for most, company leaders, because it seems like a loss of control of what your employees are really doing, or, are they going to get their work done and that kind of thing. So interesting to see that they've had great results from it. In your research and looking into this, how widespread is this? I mean, are there companies adopting this idea?
Well, my initial thoughts were exactly the same. I thought, surely this is a very new thing. It can't be that widespread. And I quickly figured out that some companies are actively implementing asynchronous working and encouraging it among their teams. Companies like GitLab or Automatic or Doist have all switched to asynchronous working. So the idea that you work when you want to work. And they found that there are great benefits to be had. So essentially, mostly a better work-life balance for employees. The obvious example is employees with a family, people with kids who are able to adapt their timetables accordingly and work when they can. But it's not just that, it's also personality. So obviously we all know someone who's a morning person, someone who's a night owl. So that gives them the flexibility to really be productive in the hours that they know are the most productive for themselves. And even from the perspective of interruption, talking to this CEO, it got me thinking about how often we are interrupted in our working day because of emails, Slack, meetings, and it is something that for some people will trigger a lot less productivity. Some people need to work in uninterrupted block in order to be as productive as they can, and asynchronous working for them is a really good way to do that. So some drawbacks that are to be expected potentially on the long term that we probably still don't know about, but definitely some great advantages to be taken from asynchronous working from a work-life balance perspective.
Yeah, with everyone, or with so many people working remote now, it's like these ideas are going to seem a little less, crazy or such lofty ideas now that things have changed, you know, from our normal office type of environment. So you mentioned you know, some of the drawbacks. So what are some of the roadblocks that companies will experience, and in any way to get over those?
So the first thing to keep in mind is that it's impossible to completely put an end to face-to-face interactions. There has to be a degree of face-to-face interaction. You have to have colleagues that know each other. I took the example of Doist. They estimate that in their communication stack, about 5% has still been preserved for physical face-to-face meetings. For example, they have a yearly company retreat where employees get to know each other on a personal level. But even so, even when looking at the actual asynchronous working side of things, you have to be, as a leader, you have to be very clear in what the outcomes are, what the expectations are. If people are needed to be online at certain hours, be very clear on what those hours have to be. And equally avoid burnout. It's very tempting, especially for an executive who's managing teams all over the world, to be wanting to be online at all hours of the day, and that really quickly leads to burnout, something that we've actually seen with remote working throughout COVID. So it's something to be taken one step at a time, and something that has to be thought through before being implemented company-wide. But there are certainly great advantages to be taken from it, namely access to global talent. So if different time zones are no longer a barrier to recruitment, you end up having access to people all around the world. So there's a balance to be achieved there, and certainly something that business leaders should give a think about.
All right, very interesting, Daphne. Definitely something to consider. Well, for more on asynchronous working, you can check out Daphne's full article on ZDNet. Thanks for watching.